Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a walkthrough session. This is a walkthrough that is part of the AspireCTF walkthroughs. It's our sixth walkthrough, and it's part two of our forensics walkthrough. Part one focused a lot on the mobile side, and we had decided to split it into two so that this time we would cover the computer side. If you missed part one, it's on our YouTube channel, so you can view that and all other previous walkthroughs that we have done. Subscribe if you want to be notified. We will be having these walkthroughs all the way till we have covered all the areas we did during the CTFs. So subscribing will help you get notified and you won't miss any of our sessions. We still have a few more sessions to go. I think this will go all the way into October, and hopefully you'll be with us throughout the whole journey. For tonight's session, we will have Kelvin. Kelvin is a digital forensics analyst with a major specialization in computer forensics. Last week we had the previous session was Ruby. So for this week, we'll have Kelvin. I'll have him introduce himself, and from there on, he will take over the session and take us through all the challenges. He'll give us an insight on how the challenges were meant to be solved. I know there were various techniques to solve them, so at least you can see the solution from the creator's perspective. I haven't introduced myself, so I am CK. I am the mentorship lead, and I'll be taking you through the remainder of the sessions with the different creators. So let me introduce Kelvin, and we'll move on from there. So Kelvin, can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, CK. As CK has mentioned, my name is Kelvin. I'm a digital forensics researcher and a trainer at ICRAL. So without further ado, I think we'll start immediately with our session. Yeah, so on your screens were some of the questions, or the 14 questions that we had for the computer forensics CTF. So I'll take us through each question at a time, and I'll try as much as I can to use a variety of tools where, say, like we can get where we're analyzing a particular artifact so that we can all appreciate the different techniques that are available. So going immediately to question number 1. So it was identify the computer name from which the image was taken. So for that, what we were provided with during for the CTF, we had not a complete disk image, but what we call sort of like what was done was sort of like a triage, meaning that only the most important aspects were captured. So I'll just show you that in a few. Yeah, and this is it. So you had a disk image.ad1. And what I've done basically is I have mounted it on Access Data FTK Imager. So it's a free tool that you can use. You will find it on the Access Data website. Just download it. And to mount that image that was provided, all you need to do is go to File, add evidence item, and then image file, and then proceed. And your final result will be what you have, what you can see on my screen. So for going back to our question number 1, which was about the computer name from which this particular image was taken from, of course, you would have to have some of the sort of places that you'd get such information from, say, a disk image. And one of the things that comes to mind is our registry files. So by looking at the path to the various registry files, you can try and have that as your first point of contact if you're looking for such kind of information. So maybe at some point you've interacted with registry viewer or regex on your PC, but Windows also stores those files sort of like on disk, and you can find that in your, whenever you take a disk image. So I'll just navigate to where you're likely to find that kind of file. And so I go to root, Windows, system32, config, and under that file path, you'll find a couple of files. Some of them are not important for this particular for this particular scenario, but we have quite a number of registry files that you can see already. You can see you can see security, software, and system. So the most common files where you're likely to get information on whether it's about the system itself, softwares installed, processes running, settings that were set, will be found on those 4 registry files. That is SAM, security, system, and software. So in this particular case, you don't really have to have crammed where you're likely to get that kind of information. What you can do is you can have sort of like a quick lookup guide that will sort of assist you in knowing where to look. Alternatively, what you can do is you can just extract everything, and by using a tool that I will show in the next step, it will sort of like guide you in for where to look for that kind of information. So for this particular instance, since we're looking for a computer name, what we'll do is we will extract the system registry hive. So in FTK, it's pretty easy to do. You just have to right click on it, export files, set your destination folder, and then click OK, and the extraction will be complete. I had already pre-extracted it, so I'll just move straight to the analysis bit. And for step number 1, I'll use a tool called Registry Explorer. It's a free tool by Eric Zimmerman. So it's one among many tools that he has developed, and it works really well in this particular scenario. So once you open it, just navigate to the File tab and select Load Hive. And then, since in this particular instance, the registry file of interest was system, I'll just double click on it and it will load. And there it is. So say, for example, what I mentioned earlier, that you're not really sure in which registry hive that you're likely to find that kind of information. What will you do? Registry Explorer has a tab called Bookmarks, and what it does is it detects what kind of hive you've entered in. If you look at the bottom left, you see it indicates the selected hive, which is system, and it has a sort of like a precompiled list of the kind of information that you're likely to pull from there. And you can see it's descriptively named. So you can do that for each of the 4 hives. Look at it. Yeah, sorry about that. So as I mentioned, this is Registry Explorer, and what we have here is the bookmarks tab. And from the bookmarks tab, you get the various, you can get the various sort of descriptive, sort of like information that you can get from the particular loaded hive. So in this particular case, we were looking for the computer name. So I'd basically just scroll down and look for what sort of mentions what I'm looking for. And just by coming down here, I can see something about a computer name, and I'd click on that, and I find it right here. And just like that, you have the answer to your first question. Yeah, so the computer name from which this particular hive was, or this image was taken, is desktop-M7V081J. So to question number 2, we look at what time zone was set in the PC from which the image was taken. So we can still go back to the same sort of process and the same process and approach. And where you're likely to get time zone information is also from the system hive, which we have already selected. And so I'll just navigate through my bookmarks, move downwards, and look for an entry that talks about time zone information. I click on it, and I find my value right there. East Africa Standard Time. Okay. So number 3, we are identifying the operating system build number. So for number 3, we will also rely on our registry files. But for number 3, I'll use a different tool so that you can also appreciate the various, sort of like the various approaches to this question. So I'll use another popular tool known as Regreeper. It's pretty easy to use. So what I'd done previously, I'd already extracted the registry hives, so that I don't have to keep doing it over and over again. So you'll find on my folder here, I have at least the 2 of interest already extracted. So going to our tool, Regreeper. So it gives you a couple of options. You have to specify the hive file, the report file, the profile that you're about to use, and then the execution of the program itself. So what we'll do is, since we are looking for the build number is normally found within the software hive. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, you don't really have to cram all that. You can either sort of prepare a quick lookup guide, have it written down somewhere, saved on your PC for quick sort of reference. Or second, you can do a lot of trial and error. You can load a particular hive, look for that data in there, and see if you can recover that data. So in this particular case, I'll just load the software Hive. So the second option, the report file, is where Registry is going to store my output. So you can just browse to where I'd like my output to be, and I'll just put it under my working folder, and I'll just create a file name. So I'll just call it software Registry, and then I'll save it. And so for profile is basically, it sort of refers to what kind of Hive you've entered in the for your first entry. If it was software, you definitely go for software. If it was SAM, go for SAM. If it was anti-user, and so on and so forth. So in this particular case, I'll put the profile software, then repeat and wait for it to execute. It should take a few seconds. Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, I think I'll wait for that to complete. I think I can quickly go to the next question, so as to save on time. So we were tackling question number 3. So we'll go to question number 4. What is the operating system's product name? So for that, I'll go back to the first tool, Registry Explorer. And so to get that kind of information, I need to change the loaded Hive. I won't find that information on system. I'll find it on software. So what I'll do is load the software Hive. Okay, seems Registry is taking quite a while to load up. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to give it some time and try and skip questions that have to do with registry analysis, and sort of come back to it later. Hopefully it will be done. In this particular case, we'll go straight to, we'll skip a couple of, we'll just skip question number 3 and 4, but revisit them probably at the tail end. Hopefully Regripa will be done by then. So I'll go straight to question number 5. And that was, when was Firefox browser last run it? So what this question is basically asking, it's asking about execution time. So when was this browser last opened and run? So for that, one of the best resources for where you can get information about execution times is prefetch files. Prefetch files are created the first time an executable is run. And the purpose of prefetch files is to allow sort of like quicker execution of a program whenever it's run again. So it's created the first time a program is run. And when you open it again, say in the next few minutes, the next hour, the next day, the next month, the execution of the program itself will borrow from prefetch, since it was created to sort of reduce sort of like the startup time of an executable. So, and I'll just take you to some of the files under prefetch. So ideally, you'd find these prefetch files under Windows, and then there's a folder called prefetch, and then you'd get a number of files sort of relating to the various executables or programs that you have installed within your environment. As you can see, the prefetch files are quite self-descriptive. The first bit is the executable name. And as you scroll down, you'll sort of come across and see some of your common file programs on your PC. The second bit after the hyphen is a hash value, usually of the file path to the executable itself. And then as we go to the end, it's basically to indicate it's a prefetch file and .pf. So going back to our question, you are looking for the first time Firefox, the browser was run or executed. So I'd go down and look for that particular file, and I see 2 prefetch files for Mozilla, Mozilla Firefox. So I'd come and export the file. Select my destination. And it's exported. Okay. So to confirm that it's there, I can see my prefetch file has already been loaded. And to analyze prefetch files, I'll also use another Eric Zimmerman tool. It's called pe.cmd. You can see it here already. It's a command line tool. So what I'll do is I'll just run it. And by just executing it, it gives you options. what options do you run in this tool? And what you can see, you have where you need to, you're analyzing a directory full of prefetch files, a particular file, etc, output formats, .csvs, .json, etc. So to run the tool, it's pretty easy. Just to run pecmd.exe-f, where you need to just indicate the file that you want to run against. And that's it, and click enter. Oops, sorry about that. Allow me to go back to FTK Imager. Okay. So to explain that bit a bit, so what we have is we have two prefetch files for Mozilla. We have Mozilla, the versions 85 and version 86. And so if you look at version 85 doesn't really have much on it. Okay, what could have happened was an update was done, and the version 85 was sort of upgraded to version 86. And what I believe, I'm not so sure about it, the prefetch file for version 85 is overwritten. So what you get is the version 86 file, since there appears to have been an upgrade on the version for Mozilla Firefox. Those are my views. If someone has, maybe there's a different explanation for why that happens, but that will be my educated guess. So I'll go back to my command prompt and run it again. So yeah, I'll just confirm version 86 is already present. Repeat that process. And click enter. Okay. So what you get is you get some output on your screen, beginning right here. So what you get is, when was the prefetch file first created? You get the creation date. That is on the 26th of February this year. And remember what I mentioned earlier, the creation date of the PF file is the first time that program was run. And then with that, what you have down there, you have a hash value, as I mentioned earlier. That is the hash value of the file path. And what you can see down below, which sort of answers the question right after this, is the run count, which is 1. Yeah, and we can get the when was Firefox last run, and there you have your answer. But you remember that, or what happens with most of these tools is the time output is usually UTC. So you need to convert that to sort of East African time. And what you need to do is just add 3 hours. So you take your time. In this particular case, let me just confirm something. Okay, for this particular case, we are just looking for the date. And so just going back to what we have, we see it's just the 26th of February, 2021. We don't really need the time, at least in this particular case. Okay. Okay, so that was question number 5. I'll zoom in. Okay, so question number 6, how many times was the browser run? So when analyzing a prefetch file, one of the first items that you get is the run count. And what that indicates is how many times that executable was run. Yeah, so in my particular case, after analyzing Mozilla Firefox, I get a run count of 1. Yeah, in sort of the solutions that were done a few months earlier, I think it indicated 50. I don't know whether it was my mistake or something has changed with the PF file that I just loaded. So, but ideally, by running the tool, you should get a standard figure across for everyone. So we go straight to number 7. We are looking at the Firefox browser's executables file path, and still going back, going down to under the prefetch analysis, we have the first part where we were looking at execution times and run counts. What you get down here are a number of directories referenced. So what you get here are some of the DLL files that were sort of pulled for the execution of Firefox, dependencies, that sort of thing. So by just scrolling down, you should get the particular you should get the file path for Firefox. Yeah. Okay. So in this particular case, I can see it after analyzing the prefetch files, but when looking at question number 11, I'll show you a different approach so that we can also tackle the two bits together, since we'll be looking at a completely separate tool. So for that, if you don't find what you're looking for under your results, under these file paths, ideally it's supposed to be highlighted in yellow. You should get it by analyzing MFT files, which have a record of all sort of files and file paths and their executables and their file paths within the whole disk. So for that, I'll demonstrate that as we look at question number 11. Okay, so going to question number 8, we're looking at when HXD was last run. And in this particular question, we are looking at the time only. So we'll go back to FTK Imager and look for HXD. And we find the file right there. I'll just export it once again. That's done. So I'll just clear my screen and confirm that the HXD prefetch file is available. And what I'll simply do is run the prefetch tool again. And let it run. Yeah. So going back to our question, we were looking at when HXD was last run. We were looking at the time specifically. So what we can see here is, you can see the last runtime. In this case, we are focusing on the time itself. So that is 11:35 plus 3 hours to convert that to East African time. And that gives you, that's at 2:35 p.m. And then you just need to convert that to 24 hour system, and that gives you 14:35:06. As I was referring to the previous question, if I wanted, say, to infer the file path where the HXD executable is located, you just need to scroll down and look for the highlighted file path name in yellow, and that tells you where the executable is located. Yeah. Okay. For question number 9, we are looking at how many times was HXD run. So we'll just go back to our results and just come back to our run count here, and we can see we already have a figure of 6. And interestingly, what you can see is the 6 times that the executable was run are also listed. And so you can also use that as sort of as a guide. And that can tell you when that, you can use that to infer when that program was run, when this computer was active, when a particular activity associated with that executable was done, etc. etc. So prefetch files do provide quite a wealth of information, and so it's always a good tool to have in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a tool created by Eric Zimmerman. Okay. So we go to question number 10, and we are looking at what brand of removable disk was connected to the PC. Okay, so what we'll do, additionally, another source of info for that will also be our registry files. So what we'll go back to our tools that we used before, and I'll go back to Registry Explorer, and information about sort of connected USB devices, that sort of thing, you'll find it under the system Hive. But as I mentioned earlier, you can always extract and load them one by one and quickly browse through the bookmarks tab to try and see if whatever information you're looking for is available there. So I'll go straight to bookmarks, go down and look at USB devices. Go down USB TOR. And once I go down there and click on the sort of a subfolder or a subkey of it, what I find is the vendor name, and I immediately infer that the product name was the removable drive connected was a Toshiba. So interestingly, if you approach that question using Regripper, you won't find this information. So it's always, again, it's always important to have more than one tool while analyzing any data for forensic purposes. Okay, so going to question number 11, a text file was created on the PC desktop. What was the file name? So ideally, what we will do in an ideal case, we will go to our disk image that was taken and navigate to sort of to the desktop folder. But you realize what happened when taking the image of this particular disk. We sort of did what I called like sort of like triage acquisition. So what this is normally done if you already know what you're looking for and you are targeting specific files, or in an instance where acquisition will take too much time and the time by which you need your results is it's needed urgently. So, or if you're in the field and you need sort of you need to get data quickly and pass it on to someone else and do sort of a full acquisition later while you're in the lab, that sort of scenario. So you'll realize if we go to the folders that were captured, we don't see anything about our desktop. But what we can do is we can get the MFT file. MFT file is basically sort of a directory that has all files that are contained within the NTFS file system. So it keeps a record of everything. So by extracting that, exporting that, and then analyzing it, you could be able to answer that particular question. So in my case, I already extracted it, and so I'll just clear my screen once again. And by doing a dir, you see that my file is already available, and as you can see, it's quite big. So for this particular analysis, I'll use another tool still by Eric Zimmerman. It's called MFT CMD. So I'll just run it. And by simply running it, you get the options that are needed to run the tool. So for us, most important, you need to specify the file that you're analyzing. You need to specify the directory where the results will be stored to, and the file name as well. And it also gives you a couple of examples on how to, for syntax purposes. So going ahead, I'll enter the file name, which is MFT. I'll also need to indicate the directory where the output will be stored. So in my case, I just want it stored in my current working directory. And then I need to specify the file name where I'll get my results. So I'll just call it mft output.csv. And I'll just let it run. And what I'm expecting in this particular case is I want my output to be put in a file, a .csv file, since it's quite a lot of data, and navigating that data on screen will be quite tiresome. So it should be done, and it's completing. Yes, and what I get is a .csv file, and this is the kind of data that you get. So what I'll do is I'll just do a bit of editing so that I can see my field names clearly. And to just take us through what we get entry numbers, sequence numbers, but of interest, we get the parent path. And moving on to the next column, we get the file name. You get your file name. So we are looking for a file that existed, a text file that existed on the desktop. So what I'll do is I'll look for /desktop. Since it's a lot of entries, it will be quite tiresome scrolling downwards. So I'll just look for /desktop, since that is the path that we're looking for, and see what results we get. So as you can see, kind of the results that from our search, we get a folder called Forensic Tools. Downwards, we get /desktop, which is the path, which also points us to a particular file, contained within the desktop. And there you see, you recover the text file name that was located on the desktop. You don't really get the text file itself, but at least you get the file name, and scrolling towards the end, you get the file size, the extension number, etc. So that's how you approach that particular question. Okay, going back to the next question, we're going back to question number 12, and we are looking, the question is, what is the most common name the networks that the PC was connected to? So for this, we will go back to our registry files. And in this particular case, we are going back to the software registry. So quickly, I'll just look at Registry, if it's done. And we get that it's done. So I'll just close Registry. Okay. So for this particular case, so I'll demonstrate using Registry Explorer. So I'll unload all hives so as to just clear my screen and load a fresh hive. So I'll unload all hives and load the software hive. And it's done. So we are looking for software. We are looking for network information. So I'll just sort of look through that and see what I can gather. So I can see here network list option, which contains information about networks a computer is connected to. And what I can see here is sort of like the network names, and the common name is network. So using the same approach, with Registry, you'll realize some information is not sort of available. So I'll just go to okay. Yeah. So remember you were running Registry before. So what we have, you remember, we have two outputs. So our first text document, if I can share that. Is basically a log of how the software run, and there's nothing much about that. It's basically shows you the plugins that were run, sort of like a documentation about the tool process itself. And this is sort of the output that you get after running Registry. You get some output. So in this particular case, so in this particular case, if I were to go back to say for just a quick lookup on from our questions and go back to something like question number 3. We used Registry Explorer, but I'd also like to show you what kind of results that you'd get by using output from Registry. So I'll just load the results again. In question 3, we are looking at the build number. So so I can just do a quick Control F and look for build. look for current build. Yeah, and by looking at my output, I can see I get the same result that I got from Regriver. And also the same info that we got about the product name, which is Windows 10 Pro. Yeah, etc. So it's always
I think Kelvin may have dropped off, but I believe we have covered all the questions. Let's wait a bit and see if he's able to rejoin. In the meantime, if anyone has a question, you can type them in the chat. And as usual, you can also send the questions to us even after the session is over. You can use our email, our WhatsApp group, or any of our other platforms to ask any questions. I see Kelvin is back.
yeah. Sorry about that. A bit of Wi-Fi trouble. So I think I'll just go through the last two questions fairly quickly. Okay, so for question number 13, we are looking at what was the last update that was applied to your PC, and there's sort of like a format to how the answer would have been expected to be. So one of the information will be looking at your Windows event logs, and there are quite a number of Windows event logs. There are quite a number of Windows event logs. So I'll just navigate you back to and navigating to, and going to Windows System 32, Windows events and logs. You can appreciate the number of various event log files that are there. So ideally, what you'll be looking for is a file called that is. So what I'll do is I'll just export the file. Export that. And quickly open that using the native, it comes bundled with Windows, the event viewer. So what I'll do is I'll just scroll through the file itself and try and get as much information as I can regarding that question. So as you can see, by creating on a particular event, you get a pretty descriptive sort of a description about what that event is all about. So as you can see, you have an event.
I think Kelvin has dropped off again. So I think we were on the final two questions. Let's give him a few moments. The other thing we'll do is by the end of all the walkthroughs, we'll also have accompanying write-ups for the walkthroughs so that you also have a step-by-step guide that you can use. So look out for those walkthroughs too. I think we'll share them on our social media sites. That's on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. So you can also follow us there, and we will update you where and when the actual write-ups will be available so that you can use them for reference. The next section, the next planned session is going to be a web session. And we also have to plan to have some of the winners also show us how they solved the challenges. So during the web session, you may see some of that. So another thing to look forward to. And finally, in the coming month, that should be in October. We will be having some new collaborations. So I can't reveal too much now, but October being the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we may collaborate with some of the other cybersecurity groups and communities and have some CTFs hosted in collaboration. So if you missed participating in the CTFs while they were running, look out for that in October. I think we'll give Kelvin 1 or 2 more minutes. If he's not able to rejoin, I think what we will do is we will share the write-up for what he covered and what was remaining. All right. Kelvin is still trying to sort out the connectivity issues. So in the interest of time, I think we will have a write-up of all the challenges and the solutions. It will be in the description of this YouTube video, so we will add that later. So be sure to check on that, and hopefully you have learned something, and we hope to keep seeing you around till the end of all the challenges and the walkthroughs. And thank you all for coming. Thank you to everyone, to Kelvin, and hope to see you next time. Goodbye. I hope not everyone has left, because I can see Kelvin has rejoined.
Yeah, so I think I'll try and do the remaining bit slightly quickly. I'm experiencing a bit of internet issues. So just move on to where I left off. So we were looking at event viewer, and we are looking at the last update that was sort of uploaded. So by simply going scrolling through the various events, so I think from this we can infer event ID 26 is basically if any events were found. And by going into the details tab, we can clearly see that nothing really was installed, just that some updates were found. Or where none were found, it was basically sort of like that, sort of like a search or sorts, or something of the sort. So going downwards, I think we will skip the number 26 event IDs and go to event ID 41. And we can see that we have a description of that event, and it states an update was downloaded. And going to the details tab, we get what that particular update was. It was a security intelligence update for Microsoft Defender, and we get the sort of the exact value that we were looking for. So this will have been our answer for that particular question. Yeah, so that was the answer to question number 13. And we go straight to number 14. At what time was the update applied? So we'd go back to our event viewer, and we would look at the time. So that's 9:35 a.m. in the morning, and that's what you have there. So if you had approached that question from another point of view by going to the details tab and sort of like expanding the system option, you'd get another system time of 6:35, but these timestamps that usually end with a Z at the end are UTC. So you'd need to convert this to the time zone setting for that particular PC. And we remember we got that value from the software registry. From the system registry hive. And so we need to convert this particular time value to East African time. So by adding 3 hours, you still get the same value that you have there. Yeah, so I believe that was it for the computer forensics walkthrough. I apologize for the many interruptions in between, but that was it. And yeah, and in case there are any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to the mentorship team, and I'm sure they will reach any of us. So thank you, and back to you, CK.
Thank you, Kelvin. I think we were able to cover all the questions at the end. So I think luckily this whole session is recorded, so anyone can go back to any part they missed and be able to view and go to the exact point where they want to receive guidance or see how the solution was to be solved. I think I had almost prematurely ended the session, but luckily Kelvin was able to join back, and this will now be the actual official end of the session. And I hope to see all of you at a point during the next session, so that we are able to go through all the walkthroughs. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.